So now what I want to do is I want to give you a couple of arguments for substance dualism. Why think that mental properties can be had by mental substances? Why not think that they're just all had by physical substances? So let me give you a couple of arguments for that, and then we'll talk about how it relates to God before we go to Q&A. Before we get into the first argument, though, we need to remember a little bit about visual pathways in the brain. And so this is just an overview of the brain. You don't have to know everything that's going on there. All you need to really recognize is that the blue, or the left side of the visual field, travels through and synapses and is processed by the right visual cortex, and that the red, or the right side of the visual field, travels down and is processed by the left visual cortex. And those two cortices are separated by the longitudinal fissure. So you'll see that space in between the two cortices. You do see them synapsing at the hypothalamus, but that just relates to circadian rhythm. So there is photosensitive ganglia that it's synapsing with, but that's just telling whether it's light or dark for your circadian rhythm. Actual visual processing starts in these cortices. And so all you have to know from this slide, you don't have to know everything on the slide, just know that the left side of your visual field is processed by the right visual cortex. The right side of your visual field is processed by the left visual cortex. And these two cortices are separated by the longitudinal fissure. That's all you need to know from that slide. So then we'll go ahead and look at the argument. And the argument goes, premise 1, if I am a physical object, I do not have a unified field of view. Number 2, I do have a unified field of view. Number 3, therefore I am not a physical object. 4, I am either a physical object or a soul. 5, therefore I am a soul. Now 2, 3, 4, and 5 should be pretty straightforward. So why think number 1 is true? Well, again, going back to the example, different parts of your visual field are processed by different parts of the brain that are separated by space. And there's not some other section of the brain that puts the data back together. And so different parts of your field of view are separated in the way that they're processed. And so just like two computers that are sitting next to each other and that aren't connected, you wouldn't expect one picture to come from that. In the same way, you wouldn't expect your brain to have a unified field of view, since different parts of the field of view are processed by different parts of the brain. If there's a soul, it can read the brain, so to speak, and incorporate that into a field of view. But if there's just the brain, then you would not expect there to be a unified field of view. But that is what we in fact experience. So another argument is a little bit more technical. It's actually one that I came up with myself, so hopefully it's a good one. And it goes from basically a surgery procedure called the hemispherectomy. That's where they remove one of the hemispheres of your brain. So number 1, we are identical to our brains. It's for the sake of the argument that the substance that we are is our brain. Number 2, it is possible that we survive a hemispherectomy. People do that all the time. Number 3, if we survive a hemispherectomy, we would be identical to part of our brain. So if what you are, the substance that you are is your brain, and you survive the hemispherectomy, then the substance that you would be that part of your brain that's remaining. You couldn't be identical to the part that's destroyed. You'd have to be identical to the part that's remaining. 4, therefore, it is possible that we're identical to part of our brain. So it's possible that we survived a hemispherectomy and then would be identical to the remainder of the brain. Number 5, part of the brain is not identical to our brain. So that's pretty obvious that a part of a thing is not identical to the whole thing. And so 5 should be pretty obvious. 6, therefore, it is possible that we are not identical to our brain. And then finally, number 7, therefore, we are identical to our brain, but possibly not identical to our brain. Now, 7 is a violation of the law of necessity of identity, that which says that if x is equal to y, then necessarily x is equal to y. Or if x is equal to y, then x is not possibly not equal to y. And so we have to reject 7 because it violates the law of logic, which means we need to also reject one of the premises that lead up to it. Now 3 through 6 seem pretty straightforward. So it's 1 or it's 2 that we'd want to reject. So 2, it is possible that we survive a hemispherectomy. What I think you'd have to say is that only part of us survives a hemispherectomy, that we don't survive, but part of us survives. But I think that is strongly counterintuitive. It certainly seems to us that the person has survived the hemispherectomy. We don't think it's a part of a person. We think it's the whole person. It's a whole person that survived. It's not a part of a person. And so it seems that it is possible that we survive a hemispherectomy. But if that's the case, then we can't be the brain because it's not the case that the substance of the brain survives. Only part of the substance of the brain survives. Yet it seems like we as ourselves survive. And so that would be one reason to think that we are not our brain, is because of that. Thank you for listening. If you found this helpful, please like and subscribe. Please also look at the show notes in order to find a link to our group so that you can join our next discussion. I look forward to chatting with you.